Karby Leggett, Standard Chartered Bank Singapore's Asia head of public sector and development organizations, held a press briefing on the third ASEAN finance ministers and central bank governors joint meeting and related meetings at the International Media Center in Cebu. According to him, the general outlook for the world is that more rating downgrades will happen. He, however, said the Philippines and Indonesia, with strong economic fundamentals, have bucked a global trend of declining credit ratings.
So in general, since the global financial crisis at the end of 2008 and then into the 2009, ratings have been on sort of a declining trajectory. That accelerated during the European crisis of a couple years back. And what's happened more recently is some of the issues around the growth in fiscal deficits, and by connection, the rise in public indebtedness has also created new downward pressure. So today, in general terms, for every downward move in a credit rating, every 3 downward moves in a credit rating, you'll have 1 upward move. So what that tells us is the general trend is for the world of sovereign ratings to be moving down. Now, there's a couple of new trends that are starting to impact the ratings as well, and that includes rising U.S. interest rates, and that includes soft commodity prices last year, although we have seen commodity prices start to come off the bottom. These trends will continue, in the opinion of the credit rating agencies, to have an impact on sovereigns, and the general outlook for 2017 is that there are likely to continue to be more credit downgrades rather than upgrades. Now, in that context, if you take a look at ASEAN, actually the story is pretty impressive, pretty compelling. We have 2 governments in ASEAN now who are actually on positive outlook, meaning that there is a chance that their rating will go higher, not lower. Those 2 governments are Indonesia and the Philippines. And in both cases, the rationale for the positive outlooks is a general improvement in the overall macro fundamentals, very strong growth, sufficient external buffers, and importantly, very, very high quality policy making and political policy effectiveness. So I think in ASEAN, almost in contrast to other parts of the world, the picture is actually pretty positive.
He said one of ASEAN's biggest challenges is infrastructure. With a demographic profile, the region has potential for very strong growth. But he said in order to enable the population to produce, ASEAN needs to immobilize capital to make appropriate infrastructure investments.
One of ASEAN's biggest challenges in the coming years relates to infrastructure. The region is actually firmly in the demographic window, plenty of young, skilled labor, and that provides the basis for potentially very, very strong growth in the coming years. And in fact, you can see it already in many of the numbers. The question is, in order to enable that population to find jobs, to produce, and to consume, you need also to make the appropriate level of investment in infrastructure. You need the roads, you need the electricity, you need the bridges, you need the transportation. So I think in many ways the biggest challenge in the period ahead for the ASEAN region is the ability to mobilize capital and make the appropriate infrastructure investments. In that sense, the credit ratings, the sovereign credit ratings, are critical for the very simple reason that bond investors require the rating in order to put their money into the bond market. So without the credit rating, you actually cannot have a sovereign bond issuance. It's more or less a requirement.